A new study has found that Gen Z would rather be influencers than like anything else, right? The study was conducted by Class Central, which is a search engine for online courses. And the list they generated of Gen Z's preferred professions is I'm trying not to sound patronizing here, but very sweet and bright-eyed and hopeful, but it's not necessarily hopeful for the rest of us. Their chosen professions don't exactly contribute quite as much to society as others do. Dewal Shaw, the CEO of Class Central, had this to say about the study's findings. This study demonstrates that Gen Z is drawn toward the more creative industries, especially ones that have become heavily intertwined with social media, such as blogging and influence. Shaw acknowledged that social media has shaped this particular generation unlike previous generations and said, while Gen Zers have earned a reputation for wanting solely to be influencers and YouTubers, this study shows that the younger generation is still drawn toward jobs that require practical skills. For example, jobs such as streamer and footballer appear beneath careers such as architect and chef. So the methodology was a bit interesting. Maybe it's not the most reliable way to collect and assess the data, but the career choices were ranked based on hashtags, not polling or anything like that. For example, the top preferred job was found to be a model because researchers found over 385 million Instagram posts with a model hashtag or hashtag model life. So, take all of this with a very fat grain of salt. So, what does the rest of the list look like? I just told you what number one was. It ranked 30 professions, 1 through 30. So, top 5 on the list was model, artist, photographer, makeup artist, and blogger. Singer, actor, influencer, and dancer were not too far down beneath those. YouTuber and content creator were somewhere in the middle, but I feel like those are just different ways to say influencer. Maybe not, though, depending on what type of content they're hoping to create. Then, ranking in the bottom 10, we started to see more traditional professions: architect, teacher, PR, or finance, which were tied, doctor, dentist, nurse, editor, and engineer. Streamer was also there, and barista and director were tied for the number 28 spot, which is very interesting. So I brought this up in the meeting earlier today. One time I was like in a coffee shop and some kids started talking to me. I don't know why. I never think that I'm that approachable when I'm in public because I usually just like have my head in a book or a notebook or something. But he just started talking to me and he was very excited and he was like, "Oh, I don't know what to do with my life." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he was like, his career options for his life were apparently either to be a YouTube star, like a YouTuber. He makes funny videos with his friends, or it was either that or he would have to be an accountant. I don't know why his life was like leading him down these two very divergent paths, but that's where he was at. And, I'm trying not to sound like too much of an old lady here, but this list is crazy. This list is crazy. It sounds like a list I made when I was very small, and I was like, I'm going to be an artist and a singer and a dancer and maybe an actress if I have time. What do you guys think? You guys are older than me. What do you make of it?
Wow.
Oh, age before beauty. You first, yeah.
I'll go. You triggered something when you mentioned that, Yasmin, like what you thought when you were, younger and what you were thinking. Many times these are the things. So even at 21, I'm curious what you guys were, original plan was, because I looked at this list from 1 to 30, and I was on the engineering approach when I first went into college, and that's number 30. Wow, what a loser I was. But the thing is, all three of us are sitting here talking, on an online forum in a show, but I can't say that we're influencers or like gaming streamers or anything like that.
No.
It's just the way that the businesses opened up to, broadcast and speaking and, just talk shows in general. So I don't know where we, folks like us, would land as far as where people plan to do stuff, or even if folks who are younger and go on in these approaches are thinking, I can make some money. It's easy if I pop. Everybody wants to go viral. If I pop off, then maybe I can make this kind of money, and then I eventually fall into something else. Because the original plans for, when people go to college, you think, what can I make money doing? Because I'm about to spend a lot going to this school unless you got full ride somewhere. So it's how much money can you make? And it seems like it shifted to how much fun can I have while also making money? The fun part never really went in when we were going into college. Gotta be honest.
We didn't have the luxury of fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that in some ways we might be making too much of it. The list and everything. It's all how you categorize things. And the name, the label influencer is off-putting to people who are over the age of 35, it seems like. But when you talk about and even the model hashtag, I mean, what were all the first supermodels, right? That came out of the 80s. They were influencers. They just didn't call themselves that. They call themselves supermodels. So I think there's that. The other thing is when you talked about, Yaz, that you were in Starbucks and the kid came up and talked to you, it kind of makes me sad because on the one hand, it's accountant. And on the other hand, it sounds like his passion was, the video making.
Yeah.
And I think if we just encourage everybody to just follow your passion. I'm like rare in that I always wanted to do this. I mean, the business changes, but some form of this. And so I never had that, oh gosh, what am I going to do? And what do I want to be? And I just pursued it. Even when my mother said, go work at a bank, we don't know anything about that. I said, nah, not so much. I'm going to go ahead and do this. So I just think we do sound old, like we make too much of these lists and young people, and maybe we don't give them enough credit. Look at the world we live in. Social media, streaming, all apps. This is their world. And maybe there's not everything wrong with it.
Yeah, and I don't blame people for dreaming. I feel like I need to remind I'm not trying to discourage people from going after their dreams. I'm really not, but it is interesting to JR's point earlier, I did not want to be here. Or, well, I shouldn't say that. I didn't plan to be here doing this job, right? This kind of just happened. I have an MBA that I do not use, but that was the path that I was on. And at the time, the idea was, let me just get the most boring degree so I can just do some boring job and just have my money and live my life and, not worry about the work that I'm doing. I know myself a lot better now to know that I never was cut out for that. I did have a job working at a little marketing boutique for a while. It did not go well. I will just say that much.
What happened?
Yeah,
I just
man.
I couldn't do it. It was like I couldn't do. I felt like the work that I was doing was so meaningless and so pointless. And it was it was actually depressing. And I'm not really a depressed person, but if I ever was, it was during that time. And I just kind of stopped showing up for work, which is very uncharacteristic of me. And please God, for me also, I'm good to work with. Tell them, JR. Tell them.
Yasmin was always on time every time I needed her.
Thank you very
on the
much.
show.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, when I wasn't there, she was there.
Thank you. That's
the
true.
opposite of me.
That is true. I'm not making that part.
You end up in different paths, and I do kind of believe now, I'm 35 years old now, and I do kind of believe that you just kind of will inevitably end up where you're supposed to be. Yeah. I talk a lot, I know that, but I never considered speaking for a living. I always consider myself a writer more than anything else. And so you just kind of end up where you're supposed to be. And the world is changing.
Yeah, I know we're not supposed to be tough on the youngsters here. And I'm always big on making sure we understand the progression of life. And, when we were younger, we would do things and have ideas. And then the generations before would say, you guys are crazy. We don't do it this way. It's the same thing. It's just repeating itself over and over again. So I'll still lend this old man addition to this whole story, though, is you also still have to wonder, because maybe everyone wants to be a streamer. Again, I know this is not a scientific study, so we'll do that going in. We know, maybe everyone wants to be a streamer, or more people want to be streamers and things like that. But everybody's not good at that. It's like how everyone wants to be, they watch NBA enough, you're like, man, I'm gonna play in the NBA. No, there's a very small window and there's very few people based off of the hundreds of thousands of people that once thought, I can be in the NBA. I don't care if I'm 5'8". So it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and it still works to be a streamer or a YouTuber.
It can work, but then there's so many people doing it that maybe get frustrated or maybe never pop off because it's hard to be seen. There's this hope for winning this lottery of, oh, I went viral. Now everything I say, a million people are gonna come and watch me and make so much money. It's still a dream in a way, like many professions. And the ones that aren't dreams are the ones where you get an MBA, where you get your doctorate, you go into the medical field, you be an attorney. If you open, if you're looking for an attorney, it's still the case. You can find about 1 million of them.
And I just want to make a real quick point before we move on to our next story, that it is very cost prohibitive to pursue some of these more traditional career paths. It costs a lot of money just to become a doctor or to become a lawyer or to become an engineer. So I don't blame them for not wanting to take on all this, an astronomical amount of debt as they're entering into their adult careers in their lives. So that is another consideration. It's a lot easier, a much lower barrier to entry to be on YouTube. You just need like a good camera and some lights. You know?
I mean, I'll vouch for that. I went to a private university, and that's something I didn't think about when I was 18. I started thinking about severely when I was 23.
Why do they let you take out, like, don't even get me started on all that. That's another story for another day.
Thanks for watching the video, guys. We also love it if you hit the join button below, because that makes you a member, and members allow us to be independent, honest. We can be as progressive as we want, no corporate media influence, and that's all because of you guys. We love doing the show with our members. Hit the join button, become one of the Young Turks.